Welcome to the Better Together podcast. I'm your host, Kyla, and today we have an episode that I think will go along with the spooky season. But as always, before we get started, I am going to read my Journey to the Heart entry. And today I chose one that very much relates to what I'm feeling lately and the things I've been questioning and what's been going on in my life, basically. Let the universe lead the way. Feel and see how the life force, the heartbeat of the universe, leads you on, guides you, takes you on the way. Yes, there are times when we need to march forward, muster up our willpower, and grind through the motions. But those times are transitionary, and that's not the magical way we're living now. Even when we stop, doubt, wonder, get tired and confused, the universe is there to revitalize us, move us along our path, and lead the way. If you're tired, rest. If you're sad, cry. If you're thirsty, take a long, cold drink of water. If you feel hopeless, feel that. But know it's just for a moment. If you feel confused, feel that. Feel it until clarity, desire, hope, and meaning break through. You don't have to trudge through on willpower, not any longer. You do not have to push your way through. Rest until you feel healed, then gently go forward. Let the universe assist you. Open your eyes, the eyes of your soul, and see where to go. Feel where to go. Sense what to do next. See how the magical power of the universe carries you along even when you get tired, even when you get confused. You are connected to yourself, to the universal life force, to God. Quiet the chatter of your mind. Renew your body. Replenish your soul. Take in all the healing energy of the world around you. Then let the universe lead the way. So that's just a little entry, something that I related with, and I'd be curious if you guys relate with that as well. Now to get started on the spooky topic, I have once again brought in my partner Zach as a guest on today's episode. I hope you guys liked him the last couple episodes.
Hope you guys liked me as well. How you doing, guys?
Yes, say hello, say hello.
Made me all self-conscious now.
You did great, I think. What did you guys think? Did you guys like him? Don't tell me if you didn't. Just kidding. All right.
Don't tell me.
So today we're going to be reading scary stories we found off Reddit. Now, we both found, well, Zach found a Reddit thread that's pretty much, are they all made up stories or are any of them real? They're kind of, some of them are ridiculous, but they're spooky stories.
Any scary story could be real if you really want it to be, you know what I mean?
What?
Whatever.
Well, I want to know if...
I like to believe that they're all real, so just to add to the scary parts, you know?
Okay, so it's undetermined if these stories are real or not, and you know what? Take it with a grain of salt. Let us know. What do you think? Do you think these stories are real? Is there one that really pops out at you? Let us know. Do you have a story picked, or do you want me to start?
I have one already picked out.
All right, do it.
It's 1:23 a.m. and someone or something is knocking on my window. That shouldn't be possible. I'm on the second story, far above the ground. I've already gone through every explanation I can think of. No bugs, no animals, no branches, not even loose siding that could be rattling. The nearest tree isn't close enough, yet the sound persists. A hurried and deliberate tapping, like someone's standing right outside. No one is there. Nothing is there. At first, I thought it might be my imagination. You know how sometimes you hear things late at night that aren't really there? But this, I know what I'm hearing. It's steady, not the 3 slow knocks of a horror movie. It's fast and persistent, then silence. A minute passes, and I hear it again. I'm sitting here, trying not to think too much about it. I know there's no way anyone could be up here. Not this high up. But the knocking isn't stopping. It's deliberate. Then from the other side of the room, more knocking. It's moved. The opposite side of the window now. The opposite window now. Wait, it hasn't moved. It's just more knocking. Like the windows are having a conversation back and forth. It's relentless. The sound echoes in the quiet of my room. I get up and pull back the curtain on the opposite window, peering out into the dark. Nothing. Just the empty space between my window and the ground. But as I'm about to let the curtain fall, I hear it again. It's coming from the other side of the room. I spin around, and wouldn't you know it, another flurry of fast knocks against the glass. I can't believe it. I dash back to bed, throw the covers over my head like that would protect me from whatever this is, and turn on a How to Better Your Life podcast, hoping it would drown out the noise. Instead, it seems to amplify it. Every time I try to focus on the podcast, the knocks break through, getting louder and louder. I can hear it clearly. Even with the volume cranked up, I must be going crazy. Schizophrenia usually shows up in your early 20s, right? That checks out. I'm 23, but I don't have any family history of it. It's not like I see Barney in a tutu dancing in the corner of my room, so I have no idea. Could it be the antidepressants? Did I skip a dose? Could that have made me even make you hallucinate? Wait, do sounds even count as hallucinations? What if someone's messing with me? But how could they knock so high up without me seeing them? Maybe they're throwing stones. But how are they throwing them that fast? It makes no sense. I glance at my phone, half expecting a text or call, maybe a joke from a friend, but nothing. I let the podcast continue, but again the host's voice is drowned out by knocking. I shove my earbuds in, trying to tune out the sound, but it's no use. It only gets louder. It almost feels taunting. Then, just when I think I've finally blocked it out, there's a pause. A heavy silence hanging in the air. For a moment I feel relieved. Maybe it's over. But I literally couldn't take the suspense anymore. I throw back the covers, my feet hitting the cold floor. I walk towards the window, half expecting to find a prankster on the other side, someone with a twisted sense of humor. I reach for the curtain and pull it back, bracing myself for whatever I might find. But still nothing. Just darkness. Just silence. So here I am, back in bed, writing this post, because what the hell? Does anyone have an idea? Thanks.
That's creepy. It's creepy because I feel like the one that I chose to read, about to read, I feel like you'll be able to tell that maybe it's not real, but we'll see. What did you think?
Oh, I mean, I picked this one because it was like really light, and I decided to just like start off on like the least creepy one I could possibly find. But you're right. I did kind of pick this because it's more believable. It really does seem like something that is legitimately like a creepy night that you would hear. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh yeah, I just heard some tapping. What is that? And you kind of just lean too far into it. This was more believable in my head.
It seems like onset schizophrenia because it is something that can. What, you don't think so?
I mean, I guess, but I'm not gonna lie. Like I've maybe like smoked a little bit too much weed inside of my studio apartment at some point and been like, "What was that?" and got a little paranoid off of that.
That's true. Yeah, you can convince yourself of anything when you're high. You're gonna think mine is ridiculous.
I love it. Let's hear it.
Okay. My husband has been pushing me to let my sister be a surrogate for our baby, but doing it the traditional way. Dun dun dun.
Traditional way. Oh wait, what?
Like
gross.
The traditional way.
All right. Well, your husband's weird.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's listen to the story. I stood in my kitchen staring out the window, my mind a million miles away. I couldn't take the tightness in my chest and the weight of what my husband had suggested to me. My husband David and I have been trying to have a baby for years, but our last visit to the hospital provided the final nails in the coffin after telling us that it wasn't ever going to happen. I was devastated, but my husband didn't seem too upset, because he suggested we had other options. I couldn't believe what he was asking of me, not only me, but also my sister. When he first mentioned that we asked my sister to be a surrogate, it didn't come across as the worst idea. But when he suggested we do it the traditional way, it sent my blood running cold. A million thoughts ran through my head as I tried to make sense of what he said and wanted. Was he attracted to my sister all this time? Was he using this as a way to sleep with my sister guilt-free? I was furious, and when I said this to him, he didn't see the problem. Told me his ancestors have done it for centuries. I didn't answer him at first. I didn't trust myself to speak without breaking. It was as if David, the man I'd known and loved, was suddenly a stranger. It wasn't just the idea of surrogacy that upset me. It was the way he spoke about it, like it was part of some long forgotten tradition. He wasn't talking about clinics or doctors. He wanted Emily to conceive with him naturally. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My sister with my husband to give us the child I couldn't have, the thought made me sick. David had been calm, almost too calm, when he explained it. He said it was the family way, something his ancestors had always done to keep the bloodline strong. The more he talked, the more I felt like I didn't even know him anymore. It wasn't just old-fashioned, it was disturbing. I tried to talk to Emily, hoping she'd be as horrified as I was. At first she thought it was a joke, but when I told her how serious David was, her face changed. She admitted that he'd already spoken to her about it. She had hoped he'd drop the idea if I wasn't on board. Now we both knew it wasn't going away. Anger burned in me. How could David even suggest this? The thought of him with Emily was unbearable. But there was something else too, something darker lurking underneath his words. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his plan than just having a child. I started digging. I went through his things looking for anything that might explain what was going on. That's when I found the old family records. At first it seemed like harmless genealogy, but the deeper I looked, the stranger it got. There were symbols I didn't recognize, notes about bloodlines and fertility, and then I found something that chilled me to the bone. Mentions of rituals, sacrifices, and offerings to some kind of ancient god. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't about having a child. David wasn't just trying to keep the family line going. He was planning something far darker. My sister wasn't just meant to carry our baby. She was supposed to be a sacrifice, an offering for this old god his family had worshipped for generations. I felt sick. My mind raced as I pieced it all together. David had been planning this for years. His calm demeanor and the talk of tradition, it was all a cover for something far more sinister. I realized I wasn't just fighting to stop an uncomfortable surrogacy arrangement, I was fighting for my sister's life. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked at me with that same airy calm, saying it was the only way to secure the family's future. Emily had to be one. She was pure, perfect for the ritual. He spoke like it was already decided, like I had no say in the matter. The desperation in me turned to panic, a gnawing fear that was eating away at me. I had to protect Emily, but I wasn't sure how obsessed my husband was about all this and the lengths he could go to make it happen. Time was running out, and I knew that if I didn't stop him, I'd lose Emily. And if that happened, the consequences would be far worse than anything I could have imagined. The night of the ritual came. David had prepared everything. Symbols drawn on the floor, candles flickering in strange, unnatural patterns. Emily stood off to the side, trembling, terrified of what was about to happen. I was shaking too. But not out of fear. I was ready. David had no idea how much I had learned, how far I had gone to turn this around. He thought I was beaten, that I had accepted his plan. He had no idea that, well, he was busy obsessing over his precious old ways. I had been finding something older, something stronger. As David began the chant, my heart pounded in my chest, but I stayed silent, watching him call on forces he didn't fully understand. He moved towards Emily, ready to start the final part of the ritual, but that's when I made my move. I spoke words he wasn't expecting, words I learned from the darkest parts of those ancient texts. They weren't meant for me to say, but I had learned to twist the ritual, bend it to my own will. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, memorizing everything I needed to make sure that he would be the one who paid the price. David froze as the energy in the room shifted. The symbols on the floor flickered, changing shape, twisting into something unfamiliar even to him. His confidence wavered, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He tried to finish the chant, but the words fell flat. "You don't understand what you're doing," he tried to shout. His control over the ritual was slipping. The power he'd summoned didn't care for tradition or purity. It was only looking for one thing, the perfect vessel. David gasped, his face twisted in shock. The ritual had shifted and he was no longer the master of it. He tried to stand, but his body convulsed again, and he fell to his knees. His hands pressed against his belly as something inside him began to swell. Pushing onward, the horrifying realization dawned on him. The life he had intended for my sister was now growing inside him. I watched as his belly expanded, stretching his skin tight. The weight of it grew heavy and undeniable. He looked up at me, his face pale, desperate for a way out, but there was none. The spell had made its choice. David, the man so obsessed with controlling his bloodline, was now the one carrying it. The look of terror on his face was all I needed to know. He understood there was no escaping it. He was pregnant. 9 months later, David was a shadow of the man he used to be. His once proud posture was crumbled under the weight of his massive swollen belly. His skin stretched tight, marked with deep stretch marks. His feet were constantly swollen, and his face, once stern, was now puffy and exhausted from sleepless nights of cramps, back pain, and the relentless discomfort of carrying life inside him. He had gone through every stage of pregnancy, morning sickness that left him heaving, strange cravings, and the unpredictable mood swings that left him either weeping or raging at the smallest things. His body ached in ways he never imagined. His back hunched as he waddled through the house, barely able to move, with a burden of his own making. The reality of pregnancy had shattered any last trace of his arrogance, leaving him humbled and broken.
Well, that one was kind of just more so disturbing than less than horror. Like, I didn't expect it to turn out like how it did. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, like, I tried to choose something a little bit more convincing, so that one kind of got me when it was just like, oh, he was part of a cult.
Yeah, at first when you start reading this, I kind of was like,
Magic.
okay, this could be real. This could be real. Like, this is really strange. Something culty in his family tradition could be real, right? But then once it started turning into like the night had come and he was like gonna do this ritual thing, that was ridiculous, because I'd be like, if that was you and I and we were trying to have a baby and that was happening, I'd be like, I'm leaving you, I'm done, I'm not staying. And
Oh yeah, no, are you
that's
fucking kidding me, dude? I
crazy.
mean, I would absolutely run for the hills if I ever suspected you even being in a cult and I was like a part of it. Hell no, I'm not being part of that shit. Like, I've watched too many horror movies.
I'm just reading the comments. So would this baby also need to be born the traditional way? Because if so, that pregnancy was a walk in
Yeah,
the
he's
park
just having
compared to
like,
what is coming.
yeah, I mean, like, he's in for a time of his life, dude.
Seriously.
Alright, I actually just found this one on the fly. I was commissioned to write a horror story. I was given some strange guidelines to follow. A narrator reached out to me after finding my stories on creepypasta.org. I usually ignore these requests, especially when they begin with, I'm starting a new channel, because they often ask me for my work for free. Sometimes, to add insult to injury, they're not even narrating but just using AI. I was going to close the message when the narrator followed up with, you'll be paid a flat fee of $300 per story. That perked up my interest. Why so high? I messaged, and was informed that I would have to sell all rights to the story. It would belong wholly to the Scream Collector, the channel, and I wouldn't be able to reprint or repost anywhere. If I accepted the commission, a list of guidelines would be emailed to me. How long do the stories have to be, I asked. 2,000 to 4,000 words, they replied. The stories would be released in a kind of anthology centered around the fictional town of Pinefell. I was the first author contacted, but if the channel was successful, the anthology would be expanded to include other writers. The stories would all be published by the Scream Collector, or TCM as the name was displayed on the channel logo, but with the conceit being that they were all true stories being shared by the titular collector of Pinefell. In short, I wouldn't get any writing credit, since my stories would be all penned by the collector. $300 per story was decent money, but selling all rights, not even getting my name attached, I messaged back that I'd have to think about it. TSC said, of course, but not to take too long because they were contacting other writers, and I might lose out on the opportunity. In the end, I accepted because, well, because of the money, obviously. I mean, how many times had I let my stories be narrated for free in exchange for exposure? And how had that panned out for me? No, this time I'd take the money. Given how stereotypical the channel looked, they only had one video including the town of Pinefell with a spooky and obviously AI voice. It didn't seem like I'd have much room for creativity. I'd just be writing formulaic, trope-filled, utterly generic creepypastas. I was sent I was sent a contract in standard legalese about what we had discussed. I'd sell all rights for $300 per story to belong to TSC, the Scream Collector. After I signed and sent back the contract, they sent me the guidelines. This is where things got weird. I was asked to write the story in a Google Doc. I'd be sent a link to the shared document, but I wouldn't be the primary owner and would have no power to change the settings or anything like that. The document would belong to the channel. I found this a bit controlling, but I was told since all stories were set in the shared universe in the small fictional town of Pinefell and had to have shared elements, and since I was giving over all rights and it would belong to the channel, they'd rather have it in their own Google Doc. Made sense, I guess. And they had some standard stipulations like 2 to 4K words, minimal dialogue, PG-13, mild swearing okay, but no F-bombs. All pretty normal for a story that would wind up being used as a narration. But after this part, I'm going to paste the rest of the guidelines here so you can read them. Write only in the Google Doc and not in any other document or file. You may only write in the Google Doc between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. You may not make any edits or changes outside of those hours. Somewhere in the story, include the phrases na ku o fi m hik ta ko ti rit.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's just 2 letters across the board, just random. Do not speak this phrase aloud. Great.
Another culty.
Before
shit.
writing, check your closet. While writing, be sure your door is locked. After writing,
These are the instructions he's getting.
after writing, if the story is not yet finished, say aloud, "Scream collector, do not come. This is nothing to collect." Then close the document. If the story is finished, say aloud, "Scream collector, come and collect," and type "fin" at the end of the document before closing it. This was all so bizarre. I mean, I assumed it was some sort of weird roleplay based on the channel concept, but the contract hadn't mentioned anything about it, so I messaged back to TSC. These aren't real guidelines, right? You don't seriously want me to only write between 6 and 8 p.m. The Scream Collector. The guidelines are part of a team effort for the universe we're making, so yes, everyone involved needs to play along, writers included. That's why we're paying such a high price, and you'll be expected to follow the theme we'll send for each story. Write between 6 and 8 p.m. Follow all guidelines. You only have to be in character while writing. The rest of your day is yours to be the OOC. Not sure what that means. That's why the limited time frame. So do you still want the commission? Yes or no? Me. What if I break the guidelines? TSC. Your payment is contingent on delivering a story that complies with guidelines. If your story doesn't meet our guidelines, you won't get paid. Or you'll be paid at a reduced rate. Or otherwise, penalized. Do you still want the commission? Yes or no? In the end, obviously I took the commission. And the very first story I was asked to write, ironically, was a rules story, the most popular kind of on YouTube and the creepypasta website. Here's the prompt I was sent. The protagonist is a visitor to an Airbnb in Pineville who finds a strange list of rules. They disappear after breaking a rule, their body eventually found dismembered in suitcases and lunchboxes hidden around a playground. Story should include 3 to 7 rules. See attached playground photo for inspiration. I opened the attached photo of an old abandoned playground in tall grass with a bright yellow spiraling plastic slide. Ugh, I thought. A rule story? Really? The most basic spaghetti of creepypastas. I finally came up with rules after Googling pictures of Airbnbs and looking at some of the rules hosts often have for their guests. I tweaked a few normal rules to make them seem just a little off, jotted them down, and was about to type them in the Google Doc when I realized it was only 11 a.m. Per the guidelines, I couldn't begin writing until 6 p.m. Such a stupid, arbitrary rule. Though it seemed bad form to break it immediately, especially given the nature of the story I was writing, and I wasn't getting paid until I was actually delivered said story. At 6 p.m., I was about to finally start drafting when I remembered the check your closet rule. Whatever, such nonsense, I grumbled, getting up to stalk over to the closet and fling open the door. My one-bedroom apartment has 2 closets, one with sliding doors in the bedroom and the other coat closet in the living room. I guess the bathroom also has a linen closet, but it's so small that it's almost more of a cupboard. Anyway, I checked all of them. Then I plunked my butt into my desk chair and opened the Google Doc, and then remembered the lock your door rule. So with a sigh, I got up to check. But I generally always keep my door locked, and today was no exception, so I sat back down and started typing. The story came easily. I don't know if it was because of the 2-hour time limit or what, but my fingers flew, and before long, the entire story was finished. I even included the phrase, na ku o fi em chikta ko ti rit, without any awkwardness. Just had to scrawl it in the room in the Airbnb, adding to the overall creepy vibe as the protagonist settles in. Once or twice while writing, I spotted the cursor for another viewer on the Google Doc. Soon enough, I finished writing. I cleared my throat, rolled my eyes so hard they almost fell out of my head, and said aloud, "Hey, Scream Collector, come and collect." I typed, Finn. Instantly, the story vanished. The screen was just blank. The entire Google Doc wiped. I started to freak out, not because I feared it was supernatural. I'd already seen the other cursor on there. But because my 2 hours of hard work, all those words, how could I prove that I actually... Just then I got an email. The money was in my PayPal account. I had been paid $300 for the 2,500 words I'd written. I also got a new message with the next prompt. A couple who were lost in the woods just outside of Pinefell meet a skinwalker. At the end, only their skins are found. Attached was a photo of some generic pine forests along with hilly trails. I sighed at the prompt. Not only another cliche, but a culturally appropriative one. Was every story going to be something off of the top 10 trope list? What's next? A grizzled detective and some unsolved murders? A bunch of kids meet Slenderman? Still, money was money. The next day I started writing at 6 p.m. after checking the closets and locking the door. I didn't finish the story, though, because I've never been a big fan of the Lost in the Woods stories. I like nature. I find it beautiful and relaxing, not scary. Not to mention, I wasn't sure what to do instead of a skinwalker. For now, I was going with a generic predatory monster. But after getting halfway through the draft, it wasn't creepy enough, and I erased almost all of it. The time was 7:58, so I logged off. I fell asleep thinking about how I could make this Lost in the Woods concept genuinely scary, and around 2 a.m. I woke up with an idea. I went to the Google Doc and added a description of an unseen predator that devours the insides of its prey, leaving only the skins like the husks of fruit. I was still pretty groggy, not fully awake until suddenly I noticed the lines I'd added were being deleted. Someone was on there, and they erased the words I wrote as I was writing them. My heart thudded in my chest. Suddenly I was wide awake. I remembered the rule about not writing except between 6 and 8 p.m., and it seemed like some sort of ridiculous roleplay, but the fact that they were actually enforcing it, that was creepy. I closed my laptop and went back to bed. I just ended up lying awake wondering, who was up watching the Google Doc, and why had my lines been deleted? Did that mean I wouldn't get paid? All the next day I kept thinking of that other cursor on the Google Doc. It was there again at 6 p.m. when I finally sat down to write. popping in and out, though I didn't actually make any edits this time. It took me 4 days, but I finally finished the story. Not my best work, but scary enough. I suppose I typed the last paragraph describing the gory, discarded skins, the painted pink fingernails now stained with blood, and then I typed Finn, right at 8 p.m., then called out to the collector, and just like before, the story vanished, and money appeared in my account. Apparently my breach wasn't so terrible as to prevent my being paid, though I did get a warning in my inbox, a single line reminder, only write in the Google Docs between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. Next came a prompt about some kids encountering a Slenderman-esque figure. Ha! Called it. Once again, I struggled with this common cliche, how to make it interesting. Maybe instead of a tall figure, I'd make the baddies short and squat, while still keeping the disappearing kids theme. Unfortunately, even though I was eager to write, I had a lot of other things scheduled between 6 and 8 that week. When I messaged TSC to ask if the 2-hour window should be shifted, I was told no, but that I could take up to 2 weeks to finish the story, and that would be fine. I was able to finish the story in the next week and got my payment. The next prompt was the absolute worst. I almost refused to write it. The narrator works as security guard on the night shift, and strange things have begun to happen. Oh, for crying out loud, every other YouTube narration is about a security guard, always on the night shift, usually with strange rules. Between that and the Friday Night at Freddy's franchise, isn't it time we bury this trope for good? And yet the pay was fantastic for the amount of effort I was putting in, which was honestly almost none. By now, the first couple narration had already come out, with a third on the way, and the audience honestly seemed to enjoy the stories no matter how trope-filled and unoriginal. So, fine. Whatever. I was kind of glad my name wasn't attached now, because if it were, I'd have to spell it Sellout. But my hatred of all these tropes led me to rebel in a different way. I stopped following all the guidelines. For example, I refused to check my closets. Would I still be paid? And I began writing at 5:58 p.m. Everything I typed at 5:58 was erased, and I got another warning. But the checking closets thing didn't have any impact. I realized nobody was actually watching me through my closets, or watching me check my closets. I could ignore the rule and the door one. The only thing being monitored was the Google Doc. I started breaking the rules pretty regularly after that, just as a small act of rebellion, even refusing to include the signature statement in my latest story. It got added in after I heard in the narration. I still got paid out with a 10% reduction for forgetting the phrase. While I was writing the shittiest of creepypastas, part of me kept wondering, what's the point of having all these silly rules? Why check the closet? Why call out the collector? I still did this one because I thought it was funny. What was the significance of the weird phrases I had to include? If I'd said aloud, would it summon a demon? I did say it aloud, and nope. Was it all just roleplay? Were the creators of Pinefell invested in their little universe? I suppose that must be it. Eccentric, but then plenty of podcasts have their own unique thing where listeners get to play along. All part of the fun. At least that's what I thought at the time. Until I woke up one morning and saw a local news article in my Reddit feed. You have to understand, I'm a hermit. I avoid social interaction as much as humanly possible, and since I work remotely, I rarely hear about stuff happening. Especially lately. I'm returning out the world, and when I'm not writing or working, I'm playing video games or watching YouTube. My point is, I was kind of up to date on some national or even international events because of social media chatter, but local news wasn't something I paid attention to. But the article that popped on my Reddit feed caught my eye because it was so sensational. A man's dismembered body was found in a suitcase and lunchboxes scattered around an abandoned playground. My first thought was, shit, was this crime inspired by my writing?
Oh my god.
That had been the very first story, and it had debuted on the channel a couple of weeks prior, so it was definitely possible. I went to the narration itself and found that it was, while initially it had only had a little over 1,000 views, it was now getting a lot more attention because apparently someone had noticed the connection on the news. I clicked to a link to another article about the killing, and this one included a photograph of the playground where the suitcase had been found. As my eyes darted across the image, my heart dropped to my toes. It was a different photo, but the tall grass, the stained yellow plastic slide spiraling down from the playset. I recognized this play area. Fuck, I muttered. That was enough for me to reach out to the authorities. After reviewing the stories on the Scream Collector channel, the police discovered that there was a second story with striking similarities to recent murders. The bodies of 2 missing hikers had been found at a state park, or rather their skins had been found, piled beside the trail like husks of fruit. And what had stumped investigators was the fact one of the victims had nails painted pink. The sister-in-law of the victim was with painted nails said she initially didn't believe it was her sister's remains because her sister never wore nail polish. Never. The investigators concluded the polish was applied post-mortem, but couldn't understand why. Now they knew. It was so that their bodies matched the details in the story that I wrote. It made me feel sick. I'm terrified they'll find more victims, children from the Slender Man story, or security guard from the overnight shift story. And it's my fault. My words are the inspiration. Let this post serve as a warning. Be careful about accepting commissions. Ghosts aren't real and strange rules won't kill you. And most of what you hear in horror films or narrations isn't true. But I'm making this post here on Reddit, the so-called front page of the internet, to warn you that there are truly sick people out there. People who do their best to make horror stories become a reality. The Scream Collector hasn't been caught yet. I just want to forget my part in all this and get on with my life. Just pretend that I had nothing to do with any of it. But I know I need to share the truth. A warning. So I'm posting this here on No Sleep and our True Crime, and everywhere and anywhere to warn people of any danger. Oh, and there's one thing I haven't told you that weird phrase that I had to add in every story, na ku o fi em hak ta ko ti rit, that one I got penalized for leaving out. The investigators pretty quickly pieced together what that meant. I feel so stupid for not having seen it myself. They're quite sure it was meant for them, and for listeners in general, and maybe for me too, and that it was a taunt from the Scream Collectors. If you read it aloud backwards, it says, "Try to catch me if you can."
Ugh, I don't like it. I do not like that story.
Update.
Oh no.
Oh God.
Oh no, I'm scared.
It's been 4 weeks since I typed this all up, and I chickened out and I didn't post it. But I just got a link to a new Google Doc and a message with a new prompt. Write a story about a serial killer who leaves clues in creepypastas. Eventually, investigators will track down the clues to the writer. When they show up at the writer's home, they find the writer is already dead at the keyboard. See attached photos for inspiration. I open the photo and the picture is of my own living room. Fuck me. I'm typing now. I've got the Google Doc open. It's currently 6 p.m. and I'm praying that if I seem to be typing like it's another story, the collector won't come for me yet. I've texted 911. I keep toggling between the Google Doc and this post. It's going live now. I'm broadcasting it everywhere, but fuck me, I'm wondering about the rules. I thought that were random. Like how the nonsense phrase was a hint, trying to catch me if you can. And if I wonder if those rules are also hinted as something I've been too slow to figure out. I wonder why I was told to always check my closet.
I don't like it. I don't like it. That's scary. Because I have so much to say about this. Because one, at first I was like, this is not real. This is the fakest shit I've ever heard in my life. And then the end of it.
Yeah, that one kind of got me. I feel like
creepy.
It was actually pretty good at the end. I mean, I'm not like
I almost want to Google search like those actual crimes. Like,
well, I mean, like the fact that he got you that much was actually means that the guy is a pretty solid writer, and I do appreciate that. I like how scared you're getting off of this.
This
This is generally the stuff that I read like when we're like in bed at night. Like,
Why do you
I'm.
read this before we went to bed?
Because I like being freaked out.
All right. Do you think that story, though, is made up?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100,000%.
That makes me feel a little bit better. What do you guys think, though? I'm curious. Okay. This story is called Someone is Watching Me. My name is William Anderson, and it is with a sound mind that I can say, despite what the doctors think, that I am not insane. I guess I should explain more for you to understand. Like stated, my name is William Anderson. I was born December 7th, 1990. I went to college and finished with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. The idea of being a doctor never really clicked with me, but I still wanted to work in that kind of environment, so nursing was the next step down. I got a job not long after college at the local urgent care, and that's where I worked for about 11 years, until recently. What you're about to read is my best recollection of the events that transpired over the past 2 months, and I hope that when you're done, you will agree with my statement from before. I'm not insane. The urgent care I worked in didn't really get a lot of people in there regularly. The town I live in is pretty small, so most of the time it was usually the same few that came in. Older patients and the occasional visits from parents after a kid gets a sprain or breaks something. It was a very rare occurrence to ever get someone we didn't know in the place. Mostly it was truckers riding by that didn't fall up to par, the road trippers that needed directions, and then there was him. It was about 1 a.m. when he came in. I was putting some patient information in the computer when a man came up to the desk. The best way I could describe him was that he looked boring. I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean he looked like the most basic man you can think of. If you were to think of a man off the top of your head, you would probably imagine a guy that looked like him. Brown hair, brown eyes. He didn't have a single noticeable thing about him. He was average height, maybe 50 years old. I say maybe because I never got the chance to ask him. Almost immediately after he walked up to the desk, he fell over. And immediately after he fell over, he started to convulse. I quickly got over to him and called for someone to help me stabilize him and for someone else to call 911. At urgent care, we treated non-life-threatening illnesses, so when someone starts to convulse and turn blue in the middle of the lobby, we aren't really accommodated to treat that. It was 1:19 a.m. when the ambulance showed up, but it was too late. He had died about 6 minutes before they came. Luckily for us, the lobby was empty when this all happened. Unluckily for us, we all had to experience it. The best way I could describe the feeling of the place afterwards would be stagnant. Like the air in the building was staying still for us to really sink in what happened. We tried to carry on like normal after everything transpired. A few of the younger workers left early because of it, while I stayed the rest of my shift to fill out all the needed forms to document what happened. Although it's not normal for something like that to happen, it's also not impossible for someone to die in urgent care. I figured that I just got the short stick in life and was one of the unfortunate few to experience such a thing, but that life would move on like normal afterwards. I was wrong. It wasn't until 4 days after that I started to notice little things. I would feel like someone was watching me from corners or that I was being followed when walking on the street. I caught myself a few times rounding a corner and almost waiting for something to just pop out from behind the wall, ready to strike me down. I chalked it up to nerves, but it really started to freak me out when I would experience it at home. I live in a pretty decent area of town, in a quiet neighborhood, so it really was strange when I would feel like someone was trying to peek into my windows and catch a glimpse of me. This feeling of unease kept up for about a week until the climax of it finally came to turn one night. It was about 1 a.m. when it happened. Almost 15 days after the stranger had died at my work, I had taken a few days off for some personal issues. So I was being a responsible adult and staying up past my normal bedtime. I was sitting in the living room on my phone watching some show I had put on when I heard something. I had thought the sound came from the show, but then I heard it again, this time louder and more distinct. I muted the TV and waited for it to happen again, and when it did, it sounded almost like glass being knocked off. My first instinct was to check the front windows, but as I was making my way to them, I heard it again, this time behind me. I turned to look at the kitchen window when I saw something pass by it outside. Unfortunately, the light of the living room glared on the window, so all I could see was a black blur. So, like an idiot, I turned them off, trying to get my eyes to adjust to the moonlight that started to shine in from outside. I had hoped it would make it easier to see out the windows and maybe catch who was doing this. I almost immediately regretted my decision because as soon as I could see out of them, I noticed a figure pressing their face against my back door. I almost jumped out of my skin and let out what I believed to be the loudest scream I have ever made. I just stood in my living room as still as I could, staring at the figure. They had their hands over their eyes as to see better inside, which just made the image more frightening. The body was hunched over, and I could see them adjusting the position as to get a better view. I just stood still and slowly tried to get my phone from the couch's armrest, and as I was about to grab it, that's when I noticed it. They were staring right at me. Their arms were at their sides, and their forehead was pressed right against the glass. I could feel their gaze peering directly into me as I just stared right back at them. Without wasting any more time, I grabbed my phone and ran to the front door. I could hear the handle of the back door shaking as the figure started to bang on it. I was running out of the house as I heard the door's glass frame shatter. I didn't bother to look. I just slammed the door behind me and ran to my neighbors. I was lucky enough for them to be home and was able to have them call the police for me, as I had become an incoherent mess. The police checked my whole house, and besides the broken glass door, they said they could find no signs that another person was ever in my house. Did they think it just smashed the door and walked away? I told them I heard it come towards me after it broke in, but they said it wasn't enough evidence to push it any further. I ended up staying with a friend for a while after because I just knew something was wrong. No one just goes to a person's back door to break it and leave. I soon found out that my suspicions were right. I was still being watched. I could feel eyes on me at almost every second of the day. But it wasn't the normal side glances people give you on the street. No, this was a hateful stare coming from one specific person. I would start to freak out at the smallest things. People bumping into me, the sound of things falling. But it all started to come to a head one day at work. It had been about 20 days since the stranger had died at my work. The image of him falling over in front of me would replay in my head every time someone came up to check in. I ended up moving to the back and just did some busy work because it was getting too much for me. I was filling out some checklists for supplies when it hit me. I was being watched. I did about 5 360s to check around me, just spinning in a circle to try and catch a glimpse of anyone that might have been there. I grabbed a nearby wall to catch my balance when I finally spotted them. Standing right in the middle of the hallway was him. He almost looked like a shadow draped in darkness, so I could see any noticeable things about him. I think we stood like that for about 10 minutes before he finally took a step toward me. I didn't waste any time. I turned and ran the other way. I was praying, pleading for someone else to show up and help me, but no one did. It was as if the entire building was empty. The hallways felt like they were stretching. What should have been a 20-second walk to another room had turned into a 5-mile sprint. Every time I turned around, he was right there, just staring at me. After what felt like miles, I finally reached a room. I slammed the door behind me and backed away, staring at the knob of it. I looked for anything to use in the room to defend myself when I heard a doorknob shaking. I started to hyperventilate, my head spinning as I watched it shake more and more violently. I slowly moved into a corner and slid down, staring at the door. As the door slammed open, I just started to scream. Get the fuck away. Get away. I don't know what you want from me. I felt a pair of hands grab my arms and start to squeeze them before a calm voice filled my ears. William, calm down. It's okay. No one is here. I opened my eyes to one of my coworkers right in front of me, the rest of them standing by the door, terrified. I felt my eyes fill with tears as I clung onto them, feeling myself break down. I didn't know what was happening. I wasn't even sure if it was real, but I know that it wasn't safe for me to be around people while I was like this. I went to my boss and told him I was quitting. He knew what happened and was understanding, telling me that if I wanted to, I could come back after things calmed down. But I knew they wouldn't, not until I figured out who was following me and what they wanted. I stayed in my house for the next few days after I quit. I knew that guy would come back for me, and I was ready to find out who he was. It had been a month since a stranger died at my work. I was a mess. I had spent all my time sitting in the living room. I was just waiting for him to show up. It was around 1 a.m. again when I heard the knocking on the glass. I immediately turned to the back door and stared at it. Watching the shadow figure hunched over like that made me realize that maybe I was going crazy. I could have sworn that he looked almost boring, like he had no real noticeable thing about him. My eyes just grew when I realized what was happening, when I realized who was at my back door. I walked to the door, pointing and yelling at him. "It's you. You're the man from my work. You should be dead. Why the fuck aren't you dead?" He just looked at me, and I could see his brown eyes stare into my soul. I banged on the door and backed away from it. I thought I was going insane. A dead man was at my back door, and I was going insane. Then I watched as a rock flew through the back door, glass shattering along the kitchen floor. I quickly grabbed a knife from a drawer and pointed it at the man. "Just leave me the hell alone. I didn't do anything to you. Why won't you leave me alone?" I screamed at him, but all he did was slowly make his way towards me. I didn't know what to do, so I just ran at him. I ran at him and tackled him to the ground. I could feel the decaying skin and clothes underneath me as I raised the knife above my head and brought it down into his chest. As I screamed at him, I just kept stabbing and stabbing and stabbing until I could feel the knife hit the floor beneath him. I was covered in blood and dirt and filth. My hands were shaking and my heart was beating a mile a minute until I heard a bang on my door. I turned to see it burst open and 2 police officers came in. That was about a month ago. I've been in the psych ward since the officers brought me in that night. I've explained what happened to me plenty of people, and none of them believe a word I say. Doesn't help that the body wasn't even there when they arrived that night. Just me covered in blood and filth and slamming a knife into the ground. Hell, they can't even figure out whose blood it was. I hear a few of the doctors and nurses say I'm probably suffering from some kind of mental insanity, but I know I'm not. I know that everything that happened was true and that I was being followed by that man I saw die a month before. I know he's not fully dead yet, too, because sometimes when I sit outside in the garden of the ward, I get this strange feeling. It's as if I'm being watched.
That one was thoroughly creepy.
That was so creepy. I don't like it.
You did well fucking going through that whole entire fucking story. That actually creeped me out. I'm not gonna lie, that one kind of got me.
I regret deciding to do scary stories because now I am thoroughly freaked out, and I'm just thinking about how I'm gonna have to like re-listen to all these stories when I edit this.
Yep.
Do you think that is a true story, or do you think that
No, that I don't think that's a true story.
You're like, no, I don't think any story is true.
I don't, honestly, it's because like they're horror stories.
True, but still scary.
Yeah, like the guy that went insane had enough time, like who literally just stabbed somebody, is writing this.
Well, I was thinking he's in a ward and he's writing this.
Yeah,
He probably doesn't have a phone.
And he posted on Reddit too.
Yeah.
I'm a 911 operator. Just had the most terrifying call. All of this is quotes, by the way, so it just goes back and forth. So.
Okay.
911. What is your emergency? Yeah. Hi. This is going to sound kind of strange, but there's a man stumbling around in circles in front of my yard. Could you repeat that, sir? He looks sick, or lost, or drunk, or something. I just woke up to get a glass of water and heard snow crunching around underneath my front window, so I peeked out. I'm looking at him now. He's about 10 yards away from my window. Something's not right. What's your address, sir? 1617 Quarry Lane in Pinella Pass. I'm going to send a squad car your way, but that's quite a ways out. Are you alone in your house, sir? Yes, I'm alone. Can you confirm that all of your doors and windows are locked? Stay on the phone with me. I know that my front is definitely locked, but I'll go check my back door again real quick. I appreciate your help. By the way, I know this is kind of strange, but I really hope that... Sir? Are you still there? He's still in the yard, but he's... What the fuck? He's upside down. Sir, stay on with me. What is happening? He's staring at me, but he's standing on his hands now. He's perfectly still, staring right at me. He's doing a handstand and he's smiling at me and not moving. He's doing a handstand, sir? I don't know. He's facing me and standing on his hands, and he's got this huge smile and he's perfectly still.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? Please get somebody out here right now, please. Sir, I need you to remain calm. I put out the call and officers are on their way. His teeth are so huge. What the fuck? Please help me. Sir, I want you to try and keep an eye on him, but make sure your back door is locked again. We need to make sure all possible access points are secured. Can you talk me through and confirm that your back door is locked? Okay. I'm walking backwards now and keeping him in my sight. My hand is on the back door knob now. It's locked. I need to check the deadbolt, so I'm going to take my eyes off him for a split second. All right, sir. Help is on the way. Just stay on the phone with me and everything's going to be all right. Sir?
Oh, no.
Sir? Are you still there? His face is up against the glass. Sir, I need you to speak up. What is happening? I looked away for a split second. Now his face, it's pressed up my front window. His teeth are huge and he's still smiling. There's no color in his eyes. Jesus, please help me. Why don't you just fucking move? Sir, I need you to go to the nearest room and lock yourself inside of it. Do you have a basement or a bedroom that you can lock yourself in? He won't stop staring at me. I could tell he wants to hurt me. Sir, I need you to listen to me. Lock yourself somewhere safe until an officer arrives at your house. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, I'm going to lock myself in my room. And you're positive that you're alone in your house, correct? Yes, I'm alone in the house. Wait a moment. He's moving. He's shaking his head. He's telling me no. He can hear us. He's telling me I'm not alone. Sir? Sir, you're right there? I heard a loud noise. Is everything all right? Sir?
That's just how it ended? Okay, that's a very ghosty story. That's a more spooky. All right,
Some handstand man was smiling? Yeah, that would fucking freak me the fuck out. Are you kidding me?
Creepy. Okay, so this is my last story that I'm going to read.
Yep.
So this one is called The Man in the Windows.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit. And I tried to find like a semi-shorter one, but it's still kind of long. So actually, it's still pretty long, but it has a lot of comments. So that's why I was like, maybe it'll be good. Since even before I can remember, I've seen a man's face whenever I look through a window. My mom loves to tell a story of when I was 3 or 4 at my grandma's house. I called them into the room and asked, why is there an ugly face in the window? My mom went and looked and assumed that I was seeing my own reflection. That's you, she said, and then apparently I got mad and started crying. I don't remember this. But my mom thinks it's hilarious and loved to tell it as a cute, embarrassing story. I always felt a cold dread when she would tell it because I know I wasn't seeing my reflection that day. I was seeing the man in the window. When I was a little girl, I thought he was old, but once I started getting a little older myself, I decided he looked to be in his late 30s to mid 40s. He has dark blonde hair and a little touch of gray in it. Usually his hair is down to his shoulders or pulled back in a ponytail, but sometimes it's cropped to his ears, and once or twice I've seen him with a buzz cut. He's almost always wearing glasses. He usually has a patchy beard, kept cropped short, though I've seen him clean shaven before. But even though little cosmetic changes happen from time to time, it's always the same man, and he always has a gaping, bloody hole in his face. Okay. It's above his left eye, just near the hairline. The hole is black with clotted blood and red, and is smeared down his face. His left eye doesn't always open all the way due to the blood and deformation around the eye socket. Spatters of red fleck his glasses. His face is pale. Any real person with this injury would either already be dead or mere minutes from death, but he lives behind the windows, looking like a reflection superimposed on my own reflection. Sometimes he's very close to the glass, and sometimes he's further away, but he's always watching me. I don't remember my mother's story, but I can remember seeing him from about age 5. By the time I already understood that this wasn't normal and had also decided that this was a secret I could tell no one. My parents raised me in a pretty extremist version of Christianity, and anything with even a hint of the supernatural, besides church, was considered demonic. As such, I had come to the obvious conclusion that the man in the window was a random demon attached to my soul due to some heinous sin that lurked in my heart. I had decided that this was a test and a judgment from God. I must pray and have faith He would deliver me. I must repent of whatever sin had caused this demon to attach to me, and I would do it alone, both out of conviction that this was my burden to bear, and out of shame at my apparent lack of purity. You might think that these are pretty weird thoughts for a 5-year-old to have, but you don't know my family. Let's just say these weren't even the most fucked up religious ideas I had placed in my head, but that would be another story. From around age 5 to 8, I remember being terrified of the man in the window. I would insist on having the curtains drawn in my room, especially at night. Like a reflection, he was easier to see when the outside of the window was dark. I tried to avoid looking at windows. I prayed. I begged God to protect me, but nothing changed. He was always still there. Sometimes around my tweens, the intensity of the fear began to wear off. He had never done anything to harm me. I was more afraid of what his presence said about me than his presence itself. I became more comfortable with windows, though I still kept the bedroom curtains closed at night and would cry when my sister would open them. At age 11, I was baptized in our church and received the gift of the Spirit, which means speaking in tongues, for those unfamiliar. This is, for Pentecostals, the moment that you are saved. I remember feeling elated, thinking, surely now I have been made clean and God will release me from the demon in the windows. When we came home that night, I only pretended to go to bed. Once everyone was asleep, I got up and spent the whole night praying. I praised God. I readapted myself to Him over and over, and I revealed in my newfound salvation. I said, God is with me now. I rebuke the demon in these windows in the name of Jesus Christ. Then, finally, I pulled the curtain aside. He turned his head to look at me. A spurt of fresh blood washed down his face, plastering a streak of his hair to his cheek. He was very close to the window, looking intently at me. Before my eyes blurred in tears of disappointment and confusion, I thought that he also looked sad. The next day, I was really sick. I must have caught something at the crowded church, and it developed into pneumonia. My fever soared, and I hallucinated that my bed was sloshing back and forth underneath me. For the first time in my life, I didn't pray. After I recovered, I began to think differently about the man in the window. Maybe he wasn't a demon. Maybe he was something else. Instead of avoiding his gaze, I started to study him. Sometimes I talked to him when I was bored, doing my homeschooling alone at the kitchen table. He still frightened me a little, but I suppose I didn't have the energy to fight against him anymore. And if I was going to have to accept that he'd always be there, I might as well try to make peace with it. Around age 13 or 14, I think I saw him with both short hair and no beard for the first time, and was struck by how similar he looked to my dad. A new theory bubbled up in my mind. Was he the ghost of some relative of mine that had attached himself to me? He wasn't any of the uncles or cousins I knew, but my dad had a fairly large extended family, some of which I had only met when I was too young to remember. I went to our family photo albums and flipped through. There I was, a chubby toddler in a white and green dress, scowling at the camera with my thumb in my mouth. Behind me was a veritable horde of family members lined up and grinning. I scanned all the faces. Only one of them besides my dad had blonde hair, and she was a woman. No one matched the man in the windows. I asked my dad if he had any long-lost brothers or cousins that weren't in the pictures. He didn't know of anyone, though I wasn't sure he was trying that hard to remember. He asked why. I was thinking about trying to do a family tree, I said. So that was a dead end. I still felt pretty sure that I must be close to the truth, but I didn't know how else to pursue this. We didn't live close to any of Dad's family anymore, and even if we did, I wasn't sure what I would even ask. Are there any blonde men in the family who died of gunshot wounds to the head? I didn't really believe myself to be demon-possessed anymore, but everyone else would think I was if I showed up with a question like that. Besides, around this time, something else was beginning to take up space in my mind. Another secret, another sin. Something so shameful and disgusting that I was not able to fully acknowledge it even to myself. But refusing to give it words didn't make it go away, and it gradually began to eat away at my mind and my heart. I spent hours in the bathroom with the lights off, crying into the sink. I pinched my arms and banged my shins against the toilet to raise bruises. I lay in the dark with my pillow over my face and wondered if I could somehow suffocate myself and never wake up. And sometimes I'd look at the man in the windows with the gaping hole in his skin and I'd think, I wish I was you. When I was 19, I was alone in the house. I knew where my father kept his firearms. He bought several because he was paranoid that Obama is going to make guns illegal, and he wanted all of us to know where they were hidden. I got his handgun and carried it to my bedroom window. I looked at the man. He was watching me. As always, I raised the gun and pointed it to my head, right above my left eye, like him. It seemed right. But then I saw him lunge for the window. His glasses slipped off of his blood-slick face as he pressed a hand against the glass. I could see him, eyes wide, mouthing words, pleading with me. No, he was saying silently through the invisible wall between us. No, please. Slowly I lowered the gun. Tears came in a flood, adrenaline and exhaustion shaking my body violently. I pressed my head against the cold glass, wishing I could hear his voice, but glad he was there all the same. I ugly sobbed. There was snot dripping from my nose, and my face was red, and I smudged the window with tears for I don't know how long. But whenever I opened my eyes, I could barely see him there, still with me, and that was just enough to keep me from picking up the gun again. Soon after, with nothing but a couple of suitcases of clothes and a few cooking tools, I moved far away from my hometown and family, and away from that handgun. Mentally, I was still not well, and the bruises on my legs showed it. But at least I had the distraction of a new job, new community, new friends to make, and a new way of life to help keep me moving forward. And also a good bit more alcohol to numb me up than was healthy. But I somehow managed to barely skate above the surface of a life-threatening addiction to it. The man in the windows was still with me, though he drew much further back from the glass after that day. For years and years, I could barely see him unless the night was very dark and the lights in my bedroom were just right. I had taken to calling him John Fenster. Fenster is window in German, if you don't know. I was no longer afraid of him. I thought of him as a silent and strange secret friend. I could go for days, then months, without really thinking about him, but whenever I'd remember and check, he was still there, faint and distant, still watching me. And so it was to him that I first finally admitted my great shameful secrets that had almost taken my life when I was 19. The first was, I think I'm falling in love with a woman. And years later, the second was, I feel like I am a man. I don't really think he could hear me. I assume I am just as silent to him as he is to me. But being able to say it to someone was the first step in the gradual loosening of a cord that was highly bound around me, a cord that I didn't realize was so close to crushing me. I began dating my close friend Jessica. I cut my hair short and I started going by a new name. My family was shocked. They begged me to come home to talk it over, and I wanted to trust that they wouldn't hurt me. Foolishly agreed. Once I was there, they stole my car keys and did everything in their power to trap me there. I won't go into detail about that awful December. Suffice to say, I did escape leaving behind my childhood, all of my childhood photos, boxes of artwork in the attic, old toys, and mementos. My books and birthday presents all left behind. But I gained my freedom, and I discovered my resilience. When I told Jessica that I wanted to transition, she smiled. I think you'll look great as a guy. And finally, the shame, self-loathing began to fade. I started to see myself as I really was, and I started to look forward to having a body that felt like my own. The urge to hurt myself became a distant memory. My life began to be filled with joy. I wasn't sure what to expect from testosterone. A lot depends on your genetics. I found that my voice started dropping almost right away, but my appearance took years to signify change. I didn't start getting facial hair until 4 years in, and it was so sparse and scraggly that I kept it shaved until about year 7. but now it's finally filled in enough to look like it belongs on a mature man rather than a pubescent boy, and I'm quite pleased with it. The blessing, but also the curse of testosterone, however, is that I started looking an awful like my dad. So to fix that, I decided to grow my hair long. That did the trick, but as you may have already guessed, that's when it finally clicked. The man in the window has moved nearer to the glass again, for the first time since I was 19, and there's no mistaking it. At age 37, I'm starting to get some flecks of gray hairs. My hair usually rests on my shoulders or is back in a ponytail. I wear glasses which slip down my nose when my face is damp or sweaty. He's me. The man in the windows with the hole in the head is me, and something is changing about the way he behaves. Whereas before he moved entirely independently to me, now he's begun mimicking my movements, almost like a reflection with a bit of a delay. His appearance no longer changes as much. If my hair is down, so is his. If I take my glasses off, so does he. It's like we're syncing up, I think. Whatever happened to him, it's going to happen to me soon. I've been running possibilities through my head. I haven't felt the urge to self-harm in a decade, so I am sure it can't be self-inflicted. Is it a deliberate murder or an accident? Will Jessica get hurt or my dogs? When does it happen? Is there something I can do to avoid it? I don't think changing my appearance will work, since I know he can change as well. The only thing I can think of is that he has always appeared as a man. If I could somehow go back to being a woman, would that prevent it from happening? But that doesn't feel right. When I was 19, I almost died from the pain of hiding who I really was, and I, reached out through time somehow to save me, to show me that there could be a life worth living in the future, a life that looks like him. How can I go back? I can't go back. I'm scared that I'm running out of time. It might be a few years, or it might be a few days. I look in the window and I see him looking back at me with intensity, struggling to keep his swollen eye open. It's like he's begging me to do something. He wants me to figure out how to change this. I swear. I'm going to figure out something. I have to.
I mean, I thought it was beautiful in the sense that it was like a transition story, but I kind of just saw it coming like halfway, like more than halfway through.
I like that story. I like that it was not a scary ending. I mean, it kind of is because you don't know what's going to happen to him.
It wasn't a scary story.
It was scary at first.
Not really. Your definition of scary is not my definition of scary.
All right, well, I think we should wrap it up. We've been going for almost 2 hours, so did you want to share any stories you have that are creepy or things that have happened to you?
So when I was a kid, and this is like actually something that still scares me to this day. Not scares me, but kind of makes me believe in the supernatural. It's my only true supernatural story. So when I was a kid, I always had excuses to stay home from school. I would always try to
Have
stay.
you told me this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I have. It's probably been a couple of years since I last told it to you. So I would always stay home from school all the time. Any excuse I could do. I even did like the Ferris Bueller's Day Off thing where I'd like lick my palms and be like, "Mom, like my palms, look how clammy they are. I'm so sick." Whatever I could do. I usually didn't want to go to school. So if I could say I was sick or had a stomach ache and my mom let me do it, I would do it. So this was one of those days, and I was at home with my grandma and my mom. And my grandma had like lived in a room that was pretty much on the opposite side of our 3-bedroom apartment, and she was kind of far, you know what I mean? Both like my mom was in her room, which was across from mine, and she was on the other side of the entire apartment. And she had been taking a nap, and I was in my room probably playing video games or watching TV or something. And all of a sudden, we just hear her scream, like scream loud.
Your mom?
My grandmother.
Oh, your grandma.
So she like we heard, like, I've never heard her scream like that in my entire life. So me and mom, like, I make it to the room first. My mom gets into the room like shortly after me, and we're just like, "Hey, like, are you okay?" Mind you, she's probably in like her like early 80s, really late 70s.
She's not that. I mean, older, but not like crazy old.
She was pretty old at that point. But basically she was really frightened. She hadn't We were scared that she had fallen, and she kept going on, like she was like just saying that there was a woman in red in the hallway. So to give you like kind of like a weird like description of the house, like a loose description of the house, she was in the bedroom that was basically facing a small hallway that led to our front door. It was an apartment. There was only one door into the hallway that was outside. Now, the hallway, like if she was laying in bed, then she could see clearly like the beginning of the hallway, but the hallway had a large mirror in it. You know what I mean? So it's like when you walked in and out, you could like check yourself in the mirror and walk out. But it was like a wide mirror that encompassed most of this like short hallway wall. She had claimed that there was a woman that was like a white woman dressed in red that was standing in the hallway like and waving at her.
Creepy.
So immediately that obviously freaked me and my mom out like so much. And I kind of like I grabbed a skateboard and I remember like cocking it over my head, and we legitimately thought that there was like an intruder, like that some old crazy lady had broken into our house and like had gone somewhere while like and grandma saw it. So we started opening cabinets, opening like our closet doors, like rummaging through things and like opening bathrooms and like everything that we could because we thought there was some crazy lady inside of our house. And like after my grandma settled down, she basically explained to us, she's like, I don't think she was here to hurt us, but I think that was a spirit. And we just sat with her, and she kind of was just like, it's okay. Like she waved at me, she smiled, like I was scared and I screamed because I was scared, but I don't think that that was like a malevolent spirit. You know what I mean? I think that was like a spirit that I saw. And it's kind of just like to cut the story at that and like how scary it originally was. I believe, and so did like my mom like believed, or at least convinced me, that it was my dad's mom who was saying hi to us, because I had never met her. She was like a rather big Jewish woman. She had died of diabetes before, from complications from diabetes, well before I was born. Um, and yeah, like, I mean that's like the only scary paranormal thing that's ever happened to me personally. But I would like to think that that was her like visiting my grandmother, who at that point wasn't, like, only had a couple years left, and was saying hi.
That's a very, very interesting, beautiful, also a little creepy. Um, I when I was in I don't even remember how old I was. I was probably in middle school. I had an experience where I was going to sleep and I had a bookshelf with a little like Disney princess like mirror on it, and it had all the Disney princesses and shaped heart in a like a heart shaped mirror thing on it. And I remember like turning around towards the mirror, like about to shut my eyes, and seeing like a weird translucent, like blue white, like light figure of a human.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing it, like quickly getting out of my bed and then going to my twin brother Noah's room and sleeping in his room for the next 5 nights after that. Do I look back on, like, I never knew what it was. I never, like, explored it more. All of that stuff, like, has always really freaked me out because I've always also been on the fence. Like, maybe I believe it, maybe I don't. I don't really know.
Totally.
And seeing that as, like, a kid, I was like, obviously that's real. But now looking back, I'm like, did I see that? Was there, like, a trick of the eye? But then I think when I visualize the memory, it's so, like, that is what I saw.
Right.
So I don't know. It's creepy.
I totally hear that. I feel like everybody has at least one of those stories where, like, there was, like, a trick of eye and it was, like, kind of freaky and scary. That actually does remind me that there was, like, I guess I don't really, like, think about this that much because the grandma story is obviously, like, so pronounced and, like, it was, like, broad daylight. It was wake.
Yeah.
But I think the only other time that, like, I think that I had a paranormal experience or it was just weird generally was that I remember I was in high school and I was living with my dad and I had like a queen size bed that was just positioned between two windows, and I bring this up basically because it's like I sometimes think it was like the shadow between the two windows. Like think about like your bed is positioned between like two windows on either side of a lake, you know? And obviously, you know, New York streetlights and whatever. But I remember waking up in the middle of the night randomly, and like I never, like, you know me, like I never sleep on my back. Like I'm like a total like baby sleeper. Like I sleep in like on my side, all curled up and everything like
most
that.
people sleep like on their sides.
Yeah, there are people that sleep on their back. There's certain people that sleep on their stomach. I've met all sorts of peeps.
Yeah.
You sleep crazy. You sleep every which way.
I do all the directions.
Yeah, you sleep on your back. You sleep on, like, I don't. But I remember waking up and I was like smack dab laying on my back in the middle of my bed, and I remember just like staring up and like the darkness of like my room above me was like that dark that was like so dark that it was hazy almost. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Where like things like look like it's like glowing, almost staticky.
Yeah.
Like it's like if you applied like the staticky of like a television with no signal to like a black backdrop, right? Except the weird part for me was that, and I remember this now, was it was just above me, that like that staticky blur was like right above me. But when I looked even a little bit to the side on left or right, like it was just regular darkness. Like there was none of that staticky. It was just dark. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But it wasn't like, and it was, I couldn't say that I made out a figure, but I remember like being kind of weirded out and almost like entranced by the fact that there was this blur in the very center that was floating right above me, but I couldn't, like, looking around anywhere in my room other than what was above me, it was just regular darkness. Like, it was just regular black.
And you were completely awake?
I was completely awake. Like, I kind of got up and I got some water, and I remember, like, sitting on the couch and, like, watching TV afterwards. Just like, that was creepy. That was weird. And then I went back to bed eventually.
Very creepy. All right, with all of that, now we get to get ready and go to bed soon, and I'm going to probably have nightmares, so that's great. Yay!
I'm here.
Spooky season.
Spooky season.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please give a like, rate, follow, comment below. Follow me on my personal Instagram, which is Kyla_Milliberger. Follow me on the podcast Instagram, which is the_bettertogether_podcast. And right into the Gmail, which is thebettertogetherpod@gmail.com. And thank you once again for coming on, Zach. Again.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.
All right, guys.